8 months after Thelis Prime, Tai Yang stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, now wearing the full uniform of a Terran commander. The promotion had surprised her, but Admiral Lee insisted. She had proven herself in 6 major battles, coordinating between human and collective forces with skill that earned respect from both sides. Now they faced their greatest challenge. Through the main viewport, she could see Krell Prime, the capital world of the Dominion, home to billions of Krell, and surrounding it, the largest fleet ever assembled, 8 Terran task groups and dozens of collective vessels. Over 400 ships total. The siege had lasted 3 weeks. The human fleet maintained a tight blockade, preventing any ships from entering or leaving. Food supplies on the planet were running low. Military morale was breaking. The Krell, who had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, were now trapped and desperate. "Admiral," Lieutenant Han called from Tactical, "we are receiving a transmission from the planetary surface. It is Overlord Krethnar himself." Lee stood straight. "Put him through." A holographic image appeared. The Krell Supreme Commander was a massive being, easily twice the size of a human. His armor was ornate, covered in medals and symbols of authority. But his eyes showed something Tai Yang had never seen in a Krell before. "Fear." "Admiral Lee," Krethnar said, his translator making his voice sound gravelly and harsh. "I wish to discuss terms." "Terms of surrender?" Lee asked calmly. There was a long pause. Then, "Yes, terms of surrender." The bridge fell silent. The Krell Dominion, undefeated for 300 years, was surrendering. The war was over. The negotiations took place on a neutral station at the edge of Krell space. Tai Yang attended along with Admiral Lee, Commander Choi, and Ambassador Velthar. Representing the Krell were Overlord Krethnar and his military council. The Krell delegation looked diminished somehow. These were the beings who had burned worlds and enslaved species. Now they sat quietly, waiting to hear their fate. Admiral Lee presented the terms. Tai Yang had helped draft them, working with human and collective diplomats. The demands were firm but not cruel. Complete withdrawal from all occupied territories. Reparations for damage caused, paid over 50 years. Reduction of military forces to defensive levels only. A joint monitoring system to ensure compliance. And the most controversial demand, integration of the Krell Dominion into the Valoran Collective as a probationary member. Krethnar looked shocked at the last point. "You want us to join the Collective? After everything we have done?" "Yes," Lee said firmly. "You have 2 choices. Remain isolated, hostile, and eventually someone will destroy you completely. Or join the community of civilized species and build a different future. Humanity believes in redemption, Overlord. We are offering you a chance to change." The Krell Military Council argued among themselves. Some wanted to refuse, to fight to the bitter end. Others saw the wisdom in accepting. Finally, Krethnar silenced them all. "We accept," he said quietly. "All terms. The Krell Dominion surrenders unconditionally." The war was over. After 18 months of fighting, after thousands of deaths and dozens of battles, peace had finally come. Tai Yang felt tears running down her face. She was not alone. Even some of the hardened Terran officers were crying. The formal signing took 3 hours. Documents were prepared, translated, and signed by representatives from Earth, the Valoran Collective, and the Krell Dominion. When it was done, Overlord Krethnar stood and looked at Admiral Lee. "I underestimated humanity," he said bluntly. "We all did. We thought you were weak because you appeared peaceful. We did not understand that you were simply choosing peace. When you chose war, we learned the difference." "The difference," Lee replied, "is that we fight to end wars, not to start them. We fight to protect, not to conquer. Remember that, Overlord. If you ever threaten the Collective again, we will be back. And next time, we will not be so merciful." 3 weeks later, Tai Yang returned to Thelis Prime with Admiral Lee and the crew of the Indomitable. The planet had fully recovered from the bombardment threat. Human engineering teams had rebuilt damaged infrastructure. The cities were thriving again. Ambassador Velthar organized a ceremony to honor the Terran forces. Millions of Thalasians lined the streets of the capital. Tai Yang walked with Admiral Lee, Commander Choi, Lieutenant Han, Lieutenant Song, and Da Yun. The crowds cheered and threw flowers. Children ran up to the human officers, wanting to touch them, to thank them. The Deathworlders had become heroes, not for their strength, but for their compassion. That evening, they gathered on the same observation deck where they had waited for death a year ago. The view was so different now. No enemy ships, no countdown to destruction, just a peaceful planet under a starry sky. What happens now? Taeyun asked. Will humanity return to Earth? Will you go back to isolation? Lee shook his head. No. We learned something during this war. Humanity is strong. Our technology is advanced, our warriors are skilled. But we are not perfect. We are not invincible. We need allies. We need friends. And the collective gave us something precious. You gave us hope that different species can live together in peace so you will stay? Veltar asked hopefully. We will stay. Earth and the collective worlds are bound together now. We will work together to build a safer galaxy. Taeyang looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, human and collective engineers were already working on joint projects. Scientists were sharing research. Diplomats were drafting new agreements. The galaxy was changing. 5 years passed. Taeyang now held the rank of admiral, commanding the first joint Terran collective warship. It was named Unity, a vessel designed by both human and collective engineers. Da-Yoon served as her executive officer. They attended a summit on Earth. Representatives from all 17 original collective species were present. Even the Krell sent a delegation, their first appearance at a major galactic gathering since the war ended. The summit announced the formation of the Galactic Defense Alliance. All member worlds would contribute to a joint military force, trained and equipped according to Terran standards. Humanity would lead the training, but all species would serve together. Admiral Lee, now Fleet Admiral and overall commander of the GDA, addressed the assembly. Taeyang sat in the front row with Da-Yoon, watching her mentor speak. For too long, Lee said, his voice carrying through the vast hall, the peaceful species of the galaxy lived in fear. Fear of the Krell, fear of other aggressive powers, fear that no one would help when danger came. That era is over. We have proven that strength and compassion are not opposites. We can be warriors when we must, but we choose to be protectors. The Deathworlders stand with you, not above you. Together we will build a galaxy where no one sends a desperate call for help into the void, hoping for rescue that might never come. He paused, looking directly at Taeyang. Because now that rescue will always arrive. The assembly erupted in applause. Taeyang stood with everyone else, clapping until her hands hurt. She thought about that desperate night on Thelis Prime, sending a message she never believed would be answered. She thought about the human fleet appearing like angels of war, impossible and magnificent. Everything had changed because one species chose to answer a call for help, because humanity decided that being strong meant protecting the weak, because Deathworlders turned out to be the friends the galaxy desperately needed. Years later, Taeyang and Da-Eun walked through the Indomitable one last time. The great warship had been decommissioned, turned into a museum to commemorate the war. Young cadets, both human and alien, toured the vessel, learning about the battles fought there. They stopped on the bridge. Everything was preserved exactly as it had been. The captain's chair where Admiral Lee had commanded. The tactical station where Lieutenant Han had calculated perfect firing solutions. The navigation console where Lieutenant Song had plotted impossible courses. A young Thalasian cadet approached them nervously. Excuse me, Admiral Kim, may I ask you something? Of course. Were you scared when the Krell came to Thelis Prime? Taeyang smiled. Terrified. We thought we were going to die. But then we learned something important. The galaxy is full of dangers, but it is also full of heroes. Sometimes they come from where you least expect. The Deathworlders, the cadet said with reverence. Yes. But they taught us something more important than how to fight. They taught us that being strong means helping others. That real power comes from choosing to care. Da-Yoon added, humanity answered our call when no one else could. They did not have to. They could have stayed safe in their own systems. But they chose to stand with us. That is the greatest strength of all. The cadet nodded thoughtfully and moved on with their class. Taeyang and Da-Eun stood alone on the bridge for a moment longer. They really did save us all, Da-Eun said quietly. Yes. But they also taught us to save ourselves. That is the real gift. They showed us how to be strong without losing our compassion, how to be warriors without becoming monsters. They left the bridge together. Outside the museum, through the large windows, the combined fleets of the Galactic Defense Alliance conducted training exercises. Human ships flew alongside vessels from 17 other species, all working together to protect the galaxy. The galaxy was safer now. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Thelis Prime. Tae-Yang stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display as the combined fleet prepared for another fight. She wore a Terran uniform now, with the rank insignia of a liaison officer. Her job was to coordinate between human and collective forces. She had learned much in those 3 months. The humans were not just powerful warriors. They were meticulous planners, careful strategists, and surprisingly compassionate soldiers. Every action they took was measured and precise. They fought to win, but they also fought to minimize casualties on both sides. Admiral Lee, a voice called from the communications station. Collective Admiral Threnzar is requesting a conference. Lee nodded. Put him through. A holographic image appeared in the center of the bridge. Admiral Threnzar was a Karathi, a species known for their military tradition. He had been skeptical of the humans at first, doubting that any species could be as effective as they claimed. 3 battles had changed his mind. Admiral Lee, Threnzar said, respect clear in his voice. Our scouts confirm the intelligence. Keldar Station is heavily defended, at least 200 Krell ships, including 5 dreadnoughts. They are preparing for a major offensive into collective core territory. How long until they move? Lee asked. 3 days at most. If we are going to stop them, it must be now. Lee studied the tactical display. Keldar Station was a massive supply hub in a strategic location. If the Krell launched from there, they could strike at 6 different collective worlds simultaneously. Millions would die. We have 3 task groups available, Lee said. 141 ships. You have 80 vessels. Against 200 Krell ships and 5 dreadnoughts, we will be outnumbered. Yes, Threnzar agreed. But we have something they do not. We have Deathworlders. Tae-Yang saw Lee smile. It was not a happy smile, but one of determination. Then we fight. Send me your fleet dispositions. I will develop a battle plan. For the next 12 hours, Lee and his staff worked on the strategy. Tae-Yang watched them transform incomplete intelligence and uncertain numbers into a comprehensive battle plan. Every detail was considered. Every contingency planned for. The plan was audacious. The collective fleet would engage the Krell head-on, drawing them away from Keldar Station. Then 3 Terran task groups would strike from different directions, cutting through the Krell formation and isolating their dreadnoughts. It was risky. The collective ships would be exposed to heavy fire. But Lee promised that his ships would break through quickly, taking pressure off the collective forces. Threnzar trusted him. The fleet arrived at Keldar Station exactly on schedule. The Krell were waiting. Their ships formed a massive wall of metal and weapons. Tae-Yang had never seen so many warships in one place. The display looked like a solid mass of red enemy markers. All ships, Lee said calmly. Execute plan is briefed. Collective forces, begin your approach. Terran task groups, prepare for flanking maneuvers. Time to strike, 6 minutes. The collective fleet moved forward. 80 ships against 200. The Krell commander must have thought it was suicide. He committed his full strength, bringing all his ships forward to crush the smaller force. Plasma fire filled space. The collective ships took hits, their shields flaring under the bombardment. Several ships reported damage. 1 frigate lost power and began drifting. Then the Terrans struck. Task Group 7 under Lee appeared on the Krell left flank. Task Group 9, commanded by Admiral Ji-Won-Yun, hit the right flank. Task Group 13, led by Admiral Dong-Hyun Shin, crashed straight through the center of the Krell formation. The Krell formation shattered like glass. Tae-Yang watched in awe as the human ships moved. They were not just fighting. They were dancing. Every ship knew exactly where to be, when to fire, when to move. The coordination was perfect. Soul's Pride, Commander Choi's voice came through the fleet channel. Execute Dragon's Breath on target cluster Delta. Busan's Hammer, provide suppressing fire. All units synchronized Alpha Strike in 30 seconds. Tae-Yang had learned the Terran battle language over the past months. Dragon's Breath meant concentrated railgun fire. Suppressing fire meant missiles to keep enemies from returning effective shots. Alpha Strike meant every ship fired at once. The results were devastating. Krell shields collapsed under the massed firepower. Armor plating vaporized. Ships that had terrorized the collective for years became helpless wrecks in seconds. The 5 Krell dreadnoughts tried to rally their fleet. They were the biggest threat, each one capable of destroying multiple ships. Lee took personal command of their elimination. Lieutenant Han, Lee said, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. Target the lead dreadnought. All batteries fire on my mark. The Indomitable's weapons locked on. Every gun, every missile launcher, every weapon system focused on one target. Han's fingers danced across his controls, calculating trajectories and timing. Firing solution complete, Han reported. Fire. The Indomitable unleashed everything at once. The space between the ships became pure light. When the glare faded, the dreadnought was drifting, powerless. Not destroyed, but completely disabled. 4 more dreadnoughts remained. Task Groups 9 and 13 dealt with them. The battle was no longer a fight. It was an execution. In 47 minutes, it was over. 200 Krell ships were either destroyed or disabled. The human fleet had lost no vessels. The collective had lost 3 ships with 7 more damaged but repairable. Admiral Threnzar's hologram appeared again. The Karathi looked exhausted but exhilarated. Admiral Lee, I have fought in 23 battles during my career. I have never seen anything like this. Your people are artists of war. War should not be art, Lee replied quietly. But if we must fight, we will fight to win quickly and decisively. Every day this war continues, more people die. We want to end it as soon as possible. After the battle, Taiyang found herself in the officers' mess with Commander Choi, Lieutenant Song, and Da-Un. Her friend had been assigned to the Indomitable as a cultural liaison, helping human officers understand collective customs and concerns. They were celebrating the victory, but the mood was somber. 3 collective ships had been lost. Nearly 800 crew members were dead. We tried to protect them, Song said quietly. Our task group was positioned to intercept fire aimed at the collective fleet. But we could not save everyone. You saved most of them, Da-Yun replied. Without your intervention, the losses would have been far worse. Taiyang looked at these human warriors. They were not celebrating their victory. They were mourning the collective losses as if those ships had been their own. This was what made them different from the Krell. The Krell saw other species as inferior, as acceptable casualties. The humans saw them as people worth protecting. Commander Choi, Taiyang said. May I ask you something personal? Of course. Why do you do this? Why does humanity fight so hard for species you barely know? Choi was quiet for a moment. Then she said, because we remember being weak. 47 years ago, Earth was broken. We had destroyed ourselves in war. When the collective found us, you could have ignored us or exploited us. Instead, you offered friendship. You shared your knowledge. You helped us heal. Now we are strong, Song added. And strength without compassion is just cruelty. We fight because peaceful species like the Thalasians should not have to become warriors. They should be free to pursue knowledge, art, and philosophy. We carry the burden of war so others do not have to. Diane wiped tears from her eyes. My people will remember this. The Thalasians were hours from extinction. You saved us, all of us, and we would do it again, Choi said firmly. That is what friends do. A message came through from Earth Command. Taiyang watched as Admiral Lee read it, his expression grave. Then he called a meeting of all senior officers. When they assembled, Lee shared the news. Earth is escalating its commitment to the collective's defense. 5 more task groups are being deployed. 40 additional ships have completed construction and are joining the fleet. The Terran government has decided we are not just defending anymore. What does that mean? Admiral Threnzar asked. Lee looked at the assembled officers. It means we are going on the offensive. The Krell started this war thinking they could bully peaceful species. We are going to show them the price of aggression. We are taking the fight to their home systems. The room erupted in shock and excitement. Take the fight to the Krell? No one had ever successfully invaded Krell space. Their defenses were too strong, their fleets too numerous. But looking at Admiral Lee, at the quiet confidence of the human officers, Taiyang believed it could be done. The Deathworlders were not just defending anymore. They were going to end the war, and she was going to help them do it. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere with perfect precision. Taiyang stood in the landing bay with Ambassador Velthar and Da-Un, watching the sleek craft settle onto the platform. It was beautiful in a deadly way, all sharp angles and smooth metal, clearly built for speed and survival. The landing ramp lowered with a soft hiss. 3 figures walked down. The man in front was in his early 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore a dark blue uniform with gold markings on the shoulders. Behind him came a woman in her 30s with an alert expression, and a younger man who carried himself with military precision. The older man walked directly to Velthar and extended his hand. Tae-Yang recognized the gesture, a human handshake, a sign of trust and greeting. "Ambassador Velthar," the man said warmly. "I am Rear Admiral Jae-Sung Lee. I apologize we could not arrive sooner." Humanity does not forget its friends. The Velaran Collective welcomed us to the stars 47 years ago. We are here to help. Velthar took the offered hand with both of his own. "Admiral, you saved 3 billion lives today. There are no words sufficient to express our gratitude." Lee gestured to his companions. "This is Commander Hyojin Choi, captain of the destroyer Soul's Pride, and Lieutenant Sang-Woo Han, my tactical officer." They moved to the council chamber, a large room with windows overlooking the city. Outside, Tae-Yang could see people celebrating in the streets. Children ran and laughed. Adults embraced and cried tears of joy. Life would continue. Velthar was the first to speak once they were seated. "Admiral, I must ask, where did these warships come from? The galaxy believed humanity had only a small fleet for system defense." Lee took a deep breath. "Ambassador, when your people made contact with Earth 47 years ago, you found us at a difficult time. We had just finished a terrible war among ourselves. Much of Earth was damaged. Our industry was in ruins. We were weak because we were recovering." Commander Choi continued where he left off. "But that weakness was temporary. Humanity has a long history of war. We know what happens when you are unprepared. When we learned about the Krell and other aggressive species in the galaxy, we made a decision. We would rebuild stronger than before. For 40 years, Lieutenant Han added, we prepared. We built shipyards in secret. We trained crews. We designed weapons. We did everything quietly without drawing attention." Tae-Yang found her voice. "But why? Why hide your strength?" Lee's expression hardened. "Because history taught us that showing strength too early makes you a target. We needed time to build enough ships, train enough people. The fleet you saw today, Task Group 7, is only one of 20 such formations. The Terran Defense Force has over 900 capital ships." The room fell silent. 900 capital ships. The entire Velaran Collective had maybe 200 vessels total, and most of those were science ships and transports. Dayun spoke up, her voice small. "Your shield stopped a dreadnought plasma cannon. Your weapons cut through Krell armor like it was nothing. How? Earth is what we call a death world," Choi explained. "High gravity, violent weather, dangerous animals, deadly diseases. Our evolution was shaped by constant threats. We are physically stronger than most species. We heal faster. We adapt better. Our technology reflects this," Han continued. "We build ships to survive Earth's gravity and atmosphere. What seems like excessive engineering to other races is normal for us. Our shields protect against radiation levels that would kill most species. Our weapons are powerful because we tested them in environments where nothing else would work." Tae-Yang thought about Earth. She had grown up there, but she had never thought of it as particularly dangerous. It was just home, but looking at it through alien eyes, maybe it was harsh. The gravity was higher than most collective worlds. The weather could be violent, and humans were physically stronger than Thalasians than most species she had met. "The Krell called you Deathworlders," Velthar said slowly. "Is that what you call yourselves?" "It is what others call us," Lee replied. "We prefer to think of ourselves as survivors. But yes, we understand the term. Compared to most species, humans come from a world that actively tries to kill its inhabitants. This made us tough. It also made us value cooperation and compassion. You cannot survive a death world alone." After the meeting, Tae-Yang was invited to tour the Indomitable. Commander Choi guided her through the massive ship. The corridors were wide and tall, built for human proportions. Everything was clean, efficient, and clearly designed for combat. They reached the bridge. It was enormous, with stations for dozens of crew members. Large screens showed the space around the planet. Tae-Yang could see the crippled Krell ships being towed away by Terran vessels. "Commander Tae-Yang Kim," Choi said, introducing her to the bridge crew. "She works for the Valoran Collective and grew up on Earth." A young woman at the navigation console looked up and smiled. "Welcome aboard, Commander. I am Lieutenant Yujin Song, Navigation." Lieutenant Han was at the tactical station. "It is good to meet you properly. I apologize for being busy during the battle." Another woman appeared from a side door, wiping grease from her hands. "Chief Engineer Bora Kang. Someone said we have a visitor?" They were all so young. Song looked maybe 30, and was probably in his late 20s. Even Kang, who held the critical position of chief engineer, looked no older than 35. Only Admiral Lee and Commander Choi were past 40. You are wondering about our ages, Choi said, noticing her expression. Most of us grew up knowing we would serve in the Defense Force. Every human child learns survival skills, physical training, and tactical thinking. It is part of our education now. We call it the Death World curriculum. Are you all soldiers from birth? Tae-yang asked carefully, trying not to sound judgmental. No, Choi said firmly. Terran law prohibits military service under age 18. But we do learn young. When you grow up on a planet where nature can kill you, you learn to be prepared. We simply extended that philosophy to include threats from space. The tour continued to the medical bay, where Terran doctors were treating wounded Krell prisoners. Tae-yang expected to see cruelty or at least cold indifference. Instead, she found the Krell being cared for with the same attention the humans gave their own crew. One Krell officer stared at her with confusion in his eyes. Through a translator, he said, "Why do you help us? We tried to kill you. We tried to destroy that planet. You surrendered," Choi replied simply. "The war is over for you. Human law requires that we treat prisoners with respect. You will receive medical care, food, and shelter. When negotiations are complete, you will be returned to your people." The Krell officer looked away. "We were told humans were weak, that your species barely deserved space travel. We were told wrong." "Yes," Choi agreed. "You were told very wrong." That evening they gathered in the observation lounge, the same place where Tae-yang had watched the battle unfold. Now the view showed a peaceful planet and a fleet of human warships standing guard. Da-un had joined them. She looked at Admiral Lee. "What happens now? Will you stay and help us fight the Krell?" "That is why I am here," Lee said. "The Terran government wishes to formally join the Valoran Collective's defense efforts. Not as junior partners, but as full military allies. We are offering 3 task groups, 141 ships to defend collective space from Krell aggression." Velthar, who had joined them, stood abruptly. "You would do this? Put your ships and your people in danger for us?" "The collective welcomed humanity when we were weak and recovering. You could have ignored us or exploited us. Instead, you offered friendship and knowledge. Now we are strong. It is time to return that friendship." Tae-yang watched the old ambassador. Tears rolled down his face. He walked to Admiral Lee and embraced him. Not a formal handshake, but a true embrace between friends. "On behalf of the Valoran Collective," Velthar said, his voice breaking, "I accept your offer. Welcome to the fight, Admiral Lee. Welcome, Deathworlders." Outside the windows, the city lights sparkled. People were celebrating. Children played in streets that would have been ash if not for the humans. 3 billion lives saved by a species the galaxy had underestimated. Tae-yang looked at Commander Choi. "What you said before, about being warriors and survivors. I understand now. Humanity did not just build weapons. You built hope. We fight so that peaceful species like the Thalasians never have to," Choi replied quietly. "We carry the burden of war so others can pursue art, science, and philosophy. That is what Deathworlders do. We protect." And looking at the human crew, at their quiet confidence and their compassion even for enemies, Tae-yang believed it. The galaxy had gotten everything wrong about humanity. They were not weak. They were not insignificant. They were exactly what the collective needed. They were protectors. They were warriors. They were friends. They were Deathworlders. The sun rose over Thelis Prime for what everyone believed would be the last time. Golden light spread across the capital city, touching the faces of millions of people who had not slept. They stood in the streets holding each other, waiting. 4 hours remained until bombardment. Tae-yang stood on the observation deck with Ambassador Velthar and Da-yun. Below them, the city stretched out in all directions. Beautiful and doomed. She could see families gathered in parks, people praying in temples, children playing one last time in the streets. "I told them about the human message," Velthar said quietly. "I broadcast it to everyone. I thought it might give them some comfort to know that someone out there cares, that someone tried to help even if they cannot arrive in time." Da-un looked at the sky. "Do you think the humans will really come?" "I do not know," Tae-yang admitted. "The message was real," someone answered. "But 9 hours from Earth? It should take weeks. Maybe the Admiral was already somewhere closer. Maybe there was a human ship passing through nearby space." Velthar smiled sadly. "Does it matter? Even if they arrive, what can a few human patrol ships do against a Krell battle fleet? At least we will not die alone. At least someone tried. 3 hours. 2 hours. The Krell ships above began moving into final bombardment positions. Tae-Yang could see them on the tactical display. 12 massive cruisers forming a grid pattern over the planet. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a continent. Together, they would turn the entire planet's surface into molten rock. 1 hour. A young technician burst into the observation deck. He was breathing hard, his face flushed with excitement or fear or both. Someone is coming. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected at the edge of the system. They ran back to the communications center. Tae-Yang's hands flew over her console, bringing up the sensor data. Her breath caught in her throat. The readings made no sense. The energy signatures were massive, far larger than any collective ship she had ever seen. And they were moving fast, too fast. Ships didn't travel through hyperspace at those speeds. How many ships? Velthar asked. The technician checked his screen. 47 contacts confirmed. Mass readings indicate capital ship class or larger. Energy output is... He stopped, his face going pale. Energy output is off our measurement scale. 47 ships. Tae-Yang felt dizzy. That couldn't be right. The entire collective fleet in this sector numbered maybe 60 vessels. Where had 47 ships come from? Can you identify them? She asked, working on it, matching signatures against our database. Stand by. The technician's fingers danced across his controls. Then he stopped. That is impossible. What is impossible? Velthar demanded. The signatures. They match Terran registry codes. But the mass readings, the energy output, none of it matches any known human ship design. These vessels are enormous. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a hammer falling from the sky. One moment empty space. The next 47 ships appeared in perfect formation. Tae-Yang stared at the visual feed in disbelief. These were not the small patrol vessels humanity was supposed to have. These were warships. Massive angular things covered in weapons. Each one dwarfed a Krell heavy cruiser. And in the center of the formation, a ship so large it seemed impossible. 4 kilometers long, bristling with gun batteries and missile ports, its hull painted in dark gray with bright white letters. TDFS Indomitable. By the ancestors, Velthar whispered. Where did humanity get these ships? Tae-Yun gripped the edge of the console. This is real? They actually came? A new message came through on all frequencies. The same voice from before, Rear Admiral Jae-Sung Lee. But this time everyone on the planet could hear him. Krell vessels. This is Rear Admiral Jae-Sung Lee, Terran Defense Force. You are in violation of Galactic Convention, attacking a member world of the Velaran Collective. Cease bombardment operations immediately and withdraw from this system. You have 5 minutes to begin compliance. This is your only warning. Silence filled the communications center. Everyone stared at the screens. Above the planet, the Krell fleet had stopped moving. Tae-Yang could imagine the confusion on those ships. The Krell had never faced serious resistance before. The collective species were peaceful, their ships designed for exploration and trade, not war. But these human ships were something else entirely. The Krell commander's response came quickly. His voice was filled with arrogance and contempt. Human fleet, you are outmatched. We have 12 heavy cruisers and a dreadnought. Your vessels are unknown to us, but you are only 47 ships against our superior numbers and firepower. Withdraw now or we will destroy you along with this planet. Tae-Yang's heart sank. The Krell were going to fight. All those human ships coming all this way and they would be destroyed trying to save a world that was already lost. The Krell dreadnought moved forward. Its main gun began charging, building up energy for a shot that could cut a capital ship in half. Tae-Yang had seen recordings of Krell dreadnoughts in action. Nothing survived their main cannon. The dreadnought fired. A beam of pure plasma crossed the distance between the fleets in seconds. It hit the indomitable square in the center of its hull. The light was so bright that Tae-Yang had to look away. When she looked back, she gasped. The indomitable was still there, intact, undamaged. Blue shields flickered around its hull for a moment, then faded. The plasma had simply splashed off them like water off stone. Admiral Lee's voice came through again, calm and cold. So be it. All ships weapons free. Show them what happens when you threaten a Deathworld's friends. Deathworld. Tae-Yang had never heard that term before. The Terran fleet opened fire. It was like watching a thunderstorm made of metal and fire. Railgun slugs crossed the distance in heartbeats, hitting with the force of small asteroids. Missiles accelerated with impossible speed, weaving through space on trails of white fire. Energy beams lanced out from every human ship, burning through Krell shields like they were made of paper. The Krell fought back. Their plasma batteries lit up the darkness. Their missiles filled space with explosions. But nothing touched the human ships. Those blue shields absorbed everything the Krell threw at them. One of the Krell heavy cruisers tried to run, a Terran destroyer, small compared to the flagship but still larger than any collective vessel, simply accelerated in pursuit. It moved with grace that seemed impossible for something so massive. Within seconds, it caught the fleeing cruiser and crippled its engines with precise shots. Another cruiser tried to ram one of the human ships. The Terran vessel sidestepped at the last moment, moving like a dancer, then disabled the cruiser with a single missile to its power core. A woman's voice came through on the Terran fleet channel. Target Alpha 3. All ships concentrate fire on their shield generators. Execute pattern Anvil 4. 6 Terran destroyers moved as one unit, their weapons all firing at the same instant. 3 Krell cruisers lost their shields in seconds. Then precision strikes took out their weapons, their engines, everything that made them dangerous. The cruisers drifted helplessly, alive but harmless. The Krell were not being destroyed. They were being taken apart. Piece by piece, system by system, the Terran fleet was dismantling the most feared military force in the sector. The Dreadnought made one last desperate attempt. It fired everything it had at the Indomitable. Plasma cannons, missiles, kinetic rounds all at once. The space between the ships became solid light. The Indomitable emerged from the firestorm without a scratch. Then it returned fire. The flagship's main batteries spoke once. Just once. The shots were so precise, so perfectly aimed that each one hit exactly where it needed to. The Dreadnought's shields collapsed. Its armor cracked. Its engines died. In 23 minutes it was over. 12 Krell heavy cruisers drifted in space, crippled and helpless. The Dreadnought floated dead in the water. Not a single ship had been destroyed. No one had died. The humans had simply rendered the entire enemy fleet powerless, and not one human ship had taken damage. Not one. Admiral Lee's voice filled the communications center one more time. Thelis Prime, this is Admiral Lee. The immediate threat has been neutralized. We are dispatching medical and engineering teams to assist with any damage from the initial bombardment. Prisoner handling crews are preparing to take custody of Krell survivors. May we have permission to land a diplomatic shuttle? Velthar stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he started laughing. Not hysterical laughter, but the deep, relieved laughter of someone who had been given back his life. Permission granted, Admiral Lee. Please land wherever you wish. You are our honored guests. Taeyang felt tears streaming down her face. They were alive. The planet was saved. 3 billion people would see another sunrise. And humanity, the species everyone thought was weak and insignificant, had just defeated the most powerful war fleet in the sector without breaking a sweat. What else had the galaxy gotten wrong about Earth? The alarms screamed through the communications center like dying animals. Taeyang Kim pressed her hands against her ears, but the sound cut through everything. Red lights flashed across every screen in the room. Outside the reinforced windows, the night sky of Thelis Prime burned with fire. Another explosion lit up the darkness. Taeyang watched as pieces of metal fell through the atmosphere, trailing smoke and flame. Those were ships. Valoran defense ships. Her people's ships. Now they were just burning debris. She had worked for the Valoran Collective for 15 years. 15 peaceful years of helping different species talk to each other, solving problems with words instead of weapons. She never thought she would see war. The Collective didn't fight wars. They talked. They negotiated. They found peaceful solutions. But the Krell Dominion didn't care about peace. The door burst open. Ambassador Velthar stumbled in, his usually calm face twisted with fear. The elderly Thalasian looked like he had aged 10 years in the past hour. His hands shook as he gripped the doorframe. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked. His voice cracked on the last word. Taeyang looked at her screen. The tactical display showed the space above their planet. Only one green dot remained among dozens of red enemy markers. One defense cruiser. The Bright Hope. She is trying to hold them back, but she didn't need to finish. They both watched as the green dot flickered and died. The Bright Hope was gone. Every defense ship was gone. Nothing stood between 3 billion Thalasians and the Krell warships above. Velthar sank into a chair. For a long moment he just stared at nothing. Then he looked up at Tae-Yang. How long until they start bombing? Our sensors show they are moving bombardment ships into position. Maybe 18 hours, maybe less, 18 hours. 18 hours until plasma fire rained down from the sky and turned cities into glass. 18 hours until 3 billion people died. The door opened again. This time it was Dayun Park, young and always full of energy. But not now. Now she looked hollow. The evacuation ships can't get here in time. The collective sent everything they have, but the nearest transport fleet is 4 days away. We have 18 hours. Silence filled the room. What could anyone say? They all knew what this meant. Velthar stood slowly. Send the distress call anyway. Let the collective know what happened here. Let them know we tried. Tae-Yang nodded and turned to her console. She began typing the emergency broadcast. Her fingers moved automatically, following the protocols she had learned years ago. Protocols she never thought she would actually use. Then she saw something strange. A communication frequency she didn't recognize. It sat at the bottom of the emergency contact list, almost hidden. The label read, Terran Emergency Response Coordination Terran. That meant Earth, humanity. Tae-Yang had met a few humans over the years. They were pleasant enough, if a bit strange. Earth had joined the collective 47 years ago, but they mostly kept to themselves. They had maybe 30 or 40 ships in their entire fleet, small patrol vessels, nothing impressive. Everyone said humanity was still learning how to be a spacefaring species. Ambassador, she said slowly, there is a Terran emergency frequency in our system. Should I include it in the broadcast? Velthar looked up. Why not? Send it everywhere. Maybe someone will hear. Maybe someone will remember us. Tae-Yang added the Terran frequency to the broadcast list. She knew it wouldn't help. Earth was over 40 light-years away. Even if they wanted to help, even if they sent every ship they had, those ships would arrive weeks too late. But she sent the message anyway. This is Thelis Prime, Velaran Collective. We are under attack by Krell Dominion forces. Our orbital defenses are destroyed. Krell bombardment fleet is in position. 3 billion civilians have no evacuation route. If anyone can hear this message, please help us. We have 18 hours remaining. Her voice broke on the last sentence. Please, someone help us. She pressed the send button. The message went out in all directions, traveling at the speed of light to every collective world, every allied station, every emergency frequency, including the Terran one. Then there was nothing to do but wait. Hours passed. The three of them sat in the communications center, watching the countdown timer tick down. 16 hours, 15 hours, 14 hours outside the cities were chaos. People ran through the streets. Some tried to find shelter in underground bunkers, but there weren't enough bunkers for everyone. Most people just held their families close and waited for the end. Diane watched the crowd through the window. I grew up down there, she said quietly. On that street, third building from the corner. My parents still live there. They said they won't leave. This is their home? Tae-Yang wanted to say something comforting, but there was nothing to say. She had sent messages to her own family on Earth, but those messages would take days to arrive. By the time her parents read them, she would already be dead. The collective sent replies to their distress call. Kind words, sympathetic words, useless words. Everyone was sorry. Everyone wished they could help. No one could. 10 hours left. 9 hours. 8 hours. Velthar stood and walked to the window. I have been governor of this planet for 32 years. I have seen babies born and elders pass away. I have helped build schools and hospitals. I have watched this world grow and prosper. He turned to face them, and now I will watch it die. I will die with my people. Tae-Yang felt tears on her face. Ambassador, I am so sorry. If there was anything we could do, you did everything you could. You sent the message. That is all anyone could ask. 7 hours. 6 hours. Tae-Yang thought about Earth. She thought about her childhood there, running through green fields under a yellow sun. She thought about her decision to leave, to join the collective and explore the galaxy. It had seemed so exciting then. An adventure. Now she would give anything to see those green fields again. 5 hours. The console beeped. Tae-Yang almost ignored it. Probably another sympathetic message from some collective world too far away to matter. But something made her look. Her heart stopped. It was the Terran frequency. Someone had answered on the Terran frequency. She hit the playback button with shaking hands. A voice filled the room. Male. Human. Speaking with a strong accent but perfect collective standard. Thalos Prime. This is Rear Admiral Jae-Sung Lee, commanding Terran Defense Force Task Group 7. We received your distress call. Humanity stands with the Valoran Collective. Relief is inbound. Repeat, relief is inbound. Hold your position. Estimated time of arrival, 9 hours, 20 minutes. The message ended. Taeyang, Dayun, and Velthar stared at each other in shock. 9 hours. Dayun whispered, that is impossible. Earth is 40 light years away. Velthar shook his head. It must be a mistake. Or perhaps a small human patrol happened to be nearby. Either way, he paused. Even if they arrive in time, what can they do? Humanity has perhaps 36 ships. The Krell have 12 heavy cruisers and a dreadnought in orbit. Human weapons are no match for that. But Taeyang felt something she hadn't felt in hours. Hope. Probably foolish hope, probably false hope, but hope nonetheless. Someone had answered. Someone was coming. Her people were coming.